Welcome to the Wilson Center Middle East Program Series, Art in MENA, a medium for activism, which explores the intersection of art and advocacy in the Middle East and North Africa region. Palestinian street artist Laila Ajjawi joins the conversation today to discuss her work as an advocate for women and refugee rights. Welcome, Laila.
Thank you for hosting me.
It's our pleasure. So I'd like to start by asking you about your story to becoming a champion for women and refugee rights through art. So how did you first decide to use street art as a platform for your activism?
Well, basically, I started by default by being in the street in the camp. And I tried for the first time to make like a mural inside the camp while my neighbors and parents, my relatives, they were all around. So I started to make my first mural there. And it was very, very exciting experience as I saw the public interacting with it. And I started to keep an eye on it to see how people interact with it. I noticed a lot of things, and I noticed that how much it contains power in delivering messages to public. So from that moment, I took it like a tool for me to express my ideas. My main ideas were about women and girls because I am myself a girl, and I lived with girls who, for example, were prevented from being to continue their studies, for example, from going to college while they were very great at school because of their parents, for example. And I raised in a family that they used to encourage, and they still encourage girls to study, to complete their study completely, and encourage them to take their decisions upon their own life without interrupting it. So that was like very great. I wanted all parents to be like mine. I also wanted to advocate about education for girls. And basically it were directed for refugees because I was living in a refugees camp at that moment. And I've seen that the poverty about the financial, the very low financial states for most of families there has given them, like, for example, a reason not to let their daughters go to schools or college because it costs a lot back there in Jordan. So they used to like teach boys more than girls in some families, not every family. Like I met a lot of families that they were great as mine. So from that point, I've seen how much energy it contains. And then it started to extend outside the camp. Outside the camp. The first thing that really gave me huge power was Women in Walls. They like made a huge campaign. They gathered a lot of female artists, and the whole campaign was around female problems, like the activism things, in specific problems that we faced in the region here, MENA region in general, and in Jordan too. So I've seen myself having a place there, and I was very grateful for having the opportunity to join there, because if I didn't, like, I wouldn't know that I am able or capable to handle big walls. The biggest wall I ever done and on a crane was there at that time. And from that time on, I just kept it like something I have to do.
Sure. That's wonderful that your family in specific is very supportive of the issues that you are advocating for. When you were first decided to paint your first mural in 2014, thinking about some of the other families who might have been less supportive or were concerned about the resources and kind of the limited resources, were you ever worried about a negative reaction to your mural? I know you said that you kind of kept a close eye to how people were reacting and responding to the mural, and it sounds like you had a lot of positive feedback, which is really great. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about the feedback that you received, and if there was, anything that surprised you or you ever had to defend yourself for that first mural in 2014.
Yeah, I believe so. In 2014, I did two types of murals. One of them was about the main issue or the main case that gathered the refugees in the camp, which was the Palestinian case and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So at that time, I made like a mural about the freedom fighters who keep fighting and resisting. So because like we all support them for sure, they are defending what remains of our land there. So at that point, I've seen that some people have been divided into two types of people. Some supporting these type of fighters, the others support the others. So people who support the other type of fighters or the other category of them, they used to scratch on that painting and trying to remove what is like, there was a band here that referred to those fighters, for example, for fighters A. So the one who supports fighters B, they used to scratch it. So I've seen that. I was so much close to that. I've seen also the students, the boys in specific, more than girls. They used to write their names. They used to scratch their names. They used to try to paint over it, for example, from very small places. So these interactions has really given me a much bigger depth and let me not exactly to get unattached for it, because it become now for the street and I shouldn't have been attached to any until I faced that. It was very rough for me when I made one for girls. I made like a dreamy girl who is looking very ambitious and dreamy as well. So that was like targeting girls and I wanted that so bad, like because I want like a figure of female that looks like us in the streets. So that was like very sad or tragic end because it has been deleted by someone. I couldn't know who did it, but I kept an eye that maybe they were people who very restricted in the religious side. I believe so, but I can't be certain. But it was a very like rough journey for me because I used to see finally how girls started to interact with it. It was very rare to find a girl's name has been written by a girl on the walls. Like we only see boys write their names and their beloved names, for example. But a girl by herself, no. Until I saw 4 names for 4 girls, and from the handwriting, they were small. I believe they were less than sixth or fifth grades. It was very obvious from their writing. They wrote their names in her face. At the first, I thought it was like a vandalism thing or a vandalism act. But when I came closer and to read their names, I realized that they were schoolgirls and who wanted like to write their names in this space because they found it empowering for them. I believe so because, you know, the streets are dominated mainly by males. And it is very rare at that moment to find like a female that writing something on a wall, whether it was vandalism or even an art, a permitted art. So I got excited for that. I get to know exactly how does it affect people and how did it really give them courage to do something that it wasn't usual to be done. And then when it was erased, it was really hard for me to take it because I believe, I mean, it caused a small a small shock. I believe so because I got sick for weeks later. And people around me start to refer that I got sick just by the time it was deleted. I tried to ignore this, but actually it is a fact after all. I got attached to it and I needed to learn that. I needed to learn that whenever it's in the street, in a public street, it's just not mine anymore. I have something within it, yeah, but whatever the public will do with it, it will be its own lifetime. So I started more to recognize that and to accept that.
I'm sure it was very powerful for those young women to see themselves represented. As you mentioned, the streets are historically male dominated. And so to see a figure that they could really connect with and as you said, to give them courage, I'm sure was very powerful for them. So with that, there's been some key both advancements and drawbacks in women's rights in the region since you started. So how does your work kind of evolve with social and political developments? How do you respond to to kind of the changing landscape for women in the region?
It is very sensitive topic at the moment, and even back days for like whenever they hear the word feminist, they directly just target you, even if you were talking in logical things. And they started also to engage their religious views in the Feminism Act. And they started to just try as much as possible to cut their wings, the feminism wings, with their religious things, or religious, not even through a true context. Sometimes we have a big issue about religion here, and how we really understand the context and how it's being understood in a different ways, how some male dominant field it is, how did they represented religion for women, and how did they use it to control them in most cases. Whenever you're trying to say that out loud in a very conservative society, and also religious society, you're getting yourself as a target. So I never wanted to go into this debate at all. So I was making what I've seen it's right. Like I was referring for education, because it is like a real thing that I wanted to fight for. I had it. If I didn't had it, I would end up, for example, with forced marriage or arranged marriage, and having many kids without even realizing the big responsibilities upon these type of decisions. Because I got my education, because I got the chance to go outside, to see people, to see different type of things, to get to know things, to experience things, I get to really to realize that it's a very essential thing for women to have it here. So the basic things I was trying to focus on was related for women education, as well as protecting women. For example, I referred to many of my artworks about harassment, as well as the sexualizing women in media. I talked about that a lot. One of my famous, I believe, and it was very early in Women in Walls, it was titled under Look at My Mind, about a woman figure, without featuring here exactly how she looks like. It was, I try always to make not a perfect regarding the social and cosmetic standards about women, how they look like. I tried a lot to break this into my artwork, because I wanted to represent all type of women, a natural women that exist around us. So at that figure, I made like it was like a green to bluish, I believe, face, without referring to skin color, because I wanted it to be global. With a look at my mind, with her mind unlocked with many different things, with joyful things about a cage that is open, with the bird just flying off, with a rainbow, flowers, anything that's referred for ideas, which was something very essential for me. So at that point, I was referring for the harassment that targets usually girls, because they are girls, and we have it here. It's not that much, but we need to fight it. We need to entitle it in law. We have problems at that point in law about females. So we started to create as much as possible friendly, and I refer to this a lot, friendly figures or friendly artworks that both represent the idea that I wanted, at the same time represent a female that is from our society, So whenever the community outside see something that represents them, they will protect it or less vandalism it. I believe that.
It's very powerful that you're able to bring all of these themes, very important messages together in a painting that still kind of transcends boundaries. You know, you were depicting, as you said, someone from your society, but by making certain choices like the color to and the ideas of coming out of the head to connect with women everywhere and to connect with to communities everywhere is very powerful, and I think also very unique to art, and that is what is so special about using art for portraying these kind of messages. So I know that what's also a very important goal for you is to advocate for refugees' rights. But I know at times women's rights and refugees' rights can be at odds with one another, especially as you'd mentioned, there still are conservative and religious groups and people in your community. So I'm wondering if you've ever felt torn between your advocacy work for both women and refugees, or if the medium of art has kind of allowed you to blend them, as you were just referring to.
We living in a community that we become like one part with almost. Yeah, we've been here as Palestinian refugees for more than 70 years. So we are talking about the decades, and basically the problems that our refugee community may face regarding what related exactly to the Palestinian case, like, as I said before, the freedom fighters there, for example. Other concepts exist in all of the community here, not just the refugees. We become like really one part here. The same problem that a refugee might face here in the north, you could find it in a citizen that facing it. We are all citizens, by the way. We have the Jordanian passport since so long. Like, my father has been born here, the same thing me. So only my grandparents has moved, and they're the only people who didn't have the citizen at that moment. At that moment, there wasn't like a lot of a big, let's say, population here. So there might be something related to resources at all. And the problem that I faced myself when I moved off or outside the camp for the first time, or I faced people from outside the camp, was racism, I believe. But I didn't mention it a lot because there is a huge debate that may happen at that moment, and we don't want to mention these type of things at this time because it will be reflected later on. It has been reflected on Syrian refugees. I've been working with Syrian refugees since 2012 as a trainer with the UNFPA. I used to train the peer, which they were the teenagers in general, on coping mechanism, on how they might really cope well according to their mental health, and how they may establish a new life here. As being a refugee myself, I understood the aspect they went through. So this type of thing has helped me a lot to reach them. And I did many in refugees camps, many artworks there. So, but back here to this community, the host community, let's say, we're the same problem, the same things, the same thing that a woman here could face, the same thing in the south or north may face. So we have here in Jordan, like there is, how can I say it, like a huge differences between the high rates or high paid jobs and the very low paid jobs, between that the government is focusing on a very specific areas, but neglecting a lot of areas. So people outside Jordan thinks that people in Amman is representing the whole Jordan. No, it's not. And a lot of my problems that I have represented within my work is really applied everywhere here, not just here, like in the region and even outside. Like, how can I say it too? Like, both, they were just separated between refugees and women, and they were gathered together in I may refer for it as a smart way. It's like when I represented, for example, once in a very big event for a refugee camp, different than the one I raised in. I wanted to make the timeline of refugees. So I made sure that I represent both males and females according to equality, because they were both part of it. I'm not trying at all to refer for males only. So it's how I empower women through these type of things, by adding a women figure or a girl or a female figure in general within all these type of things, because I want girls to understand they had a part back then at those times. So later on, with every message I am representing, by working with NGOs and different types of agencies here, organizations like the UN Women, also with organization as MIC and handicap. I used really to make sure that they understand my aspect, that they understand that I encourage equality, I encourage diversity as well, that I don't go to perfection in how they look, and they like it. In most of the cases, they like it. I've never been rejected for an artwork like that. So I'm happy that they understood my aspect. At the same time, they've given me work and the accessibility to be able to represent these murals, for example. I do also like make my own researches. For example, one of my murals were about, it was about working out, about sports in general and the healthy lifestyle. So I wanted to make a woman with dumbbells, because it has like a very wrong concept about women, that they shouldn't play weights, for example. But no, I added it, but also with a woman that wearing hijab, and just representing one like us. I do also like support both women in their choices, all women in their choices, whether it was with hijab or without, because it has the freedom, the full freedom. So I represent both in my work in general. And I hope that my message will reach people, because really there is a huge debate about feminism here and the anti-feminism, for example. And it's something I've been suffering from, because let's say it came from even close family members, for example. But we have our own, like, I don't follow someone else. These type of ideas is origin. It's because I'm living here, because I can see, because I have tried, I have experienced myself.
Zooming into that issue of women's representation in historically male-dominated sectors, such as working out, I'm curious if you've noticed more women street artists. I know that is, as you mentioned earlier, the streets often have the male signatures on them, that artists tend to be male when it comes to graffiti and mural work, not just in the Middle East region, but globally. So I'm wondering, since you started, if you have noticed more women have come out either as street artists to take their work alongside you, or just more generally speaking, if you've noticed gender equality within the arts and your community in that field.
Yes, back then, at that time, 2014, there were just maybe 2 females, I believe. I was one of them, and only me in my city. Now you could count really a good number of female artists who took the courage, and they started to draw on the street, and they started to engage in the artistic or let's say the hip hop culture or movement that is happening in Amman. There is a focus here on Amman by the governmental sector there. They're supporting it. They are giving spaces where street artists may go and express their ideas there. But here in the other cities, no, we don't have this at all. And you might get in trouble if the government, for example, wasn't aware of what you're doing. So a lot of permissions you need to take along the way. And there is no like specific places, a public. You could do it just in your own garage, for example, in your backyard. Nobody will talk to you. But in general, yes, they got encouraged by each other. And it was something very interesting to see that happening. I also myself received a lot of messages from girls that they said they got encouraged by seeing a real, like a female like them, also wearing hijab, because wearing hijab has many people understood it, that it could really just train you from doing a lot of activities, which is wrong completely. Like you could do whatever you want from activities according to your own view of hijab. For example, I do not represent anything that is illegal, because I am a good citizen, I believe, and not even like something that goes directly against their religion, because I'm wearing hijab and I'm representing a neutral religious woman. And I believe that it has like appeared in my work as well. I don't go to revealing more skins, for example, because it is still like for me being sexualized. And also street artists globally has been using the women figure as being really sexualized a lot. I've seen that so much, like really, really a lot, by drawing them in half naked, by drawing them with really just the beauty standards, with a very sexual acts, and a lot, like really, there's a huge number out there. So representing a very natural woman also not just encourage people here in the region, not just girls in specific, also girls from outside. I received a lot of messages, especially after I'm being interviewed with a global media. For example, after Cosmopolitan has been interviewed me in 2015, let's say that my life has changed and I got recognized by a lot of people outside. And it felt really great. I felt really that what I'm doing is really matters and it affects people. I never really felt it affecting people until people really talked to me about it, especially girls. And it felt so amazing, like to encourage another girl for taking a step, because I believe that most of our concerns coming from our own fears and minds. Like here, for example, in our community, you're being born, but having everything written to you, like you should go to this college, you should study these types of categories, not these, because you're a girl. But now, no, these type of things has been minimized a lot, and girls started to take steps outside these type of lines that community created before.
Yes, it's really amazing that these works that are on the streets in Jordan are able to transcend boundaries and borders, and you're garnering international attention, both international and regional attention, because, as you said, a lot of these issues are shared not just by women in the Middle East region, but by women globally. And so I think art is so powerful in that way, because you're able to look at this piece and it invokes such a personal response. Women from America, from the Middle East, from no matter where, they're able to look at this and respond in a way that's very personal to them. So it's really amazing that you've been able to touch so many women and girls and refugee communities and men alike, not just really create a shared community with your work. So thank you so much for your time. Just one last question. I'm curious what you are working on right now, what your next project is.
Oh, well, I've been preparing for a lot of, there's two big projects are coming up, and both are engaging women with, which is something I'm happy with. One of them is with a global brand, which is something I would do for the first time. Super excited for being recognized by a brand, which is really something very powerful and empowering for any artist. So that will bring more attention for my work as well, and that will give me more bigger responsibility, and also to encourage me more to get better in my art.
Well, congratulations for that. That is really wonderful. So looking forward to seeing the final work. And thank you again so much for your time and for your work elevating these very important issues. Thank you.
Thanks for hosting me and making my voice heard.